Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties. Brought to you in part by Comcast, bringing the power of the internet into Michigan homes and businesses. Now, here's your host, MAC Executive Director Stephen Currie.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, the only podcast by the Michigan Association of Counties. For counties by counties. That's a new thing I added this week, guys.
And how it's very exclusive.
Thank you. It is.
Yeah.
It's only going out to certain people. I want to thank Comcast for sponsoring the podcast this week. It's been a while since we've done one, but as we move into an election next week, things will start picking back up legislatively. So Deena, why don't we talk a little bit about that? What are we expecting on the legislative calendar over the next, basically 2 months here before the end of the year?
You'd think over 2 months, there'd be a ton of legislative session days scheduled. But from what we understand, there could be as few as 6, maybe as many as 9 legislative session days. They're going to come back after the election next Tuesday. They're supposed to come back on Wednesday. I don't think they will. And then Thursday, the House and Senate come back and they'll have their leadership elections. So they'll choose the new Senate Majority Leader, Senate Minority Leader, Speaker. They'll choose the floor leaders. They'll choose everybody at that point in time, whoever's going to be in leadership. And, really, depending on how the election goes, that'll be pretty interesting to see and watch. But after November 10th, then it gets into their typical break for hunting season. So opening day on the 15th. So they won't be here for that. Then they go into Thanksgiving, and then they come back right after Thanksgiving. So that week of November 30th. And we don't know how many days each chamber is going to be in that week. We know they're going to be in on December 1st. But other than that, we're not quite sure. Then you're looking at the week of December 6th through the 8th. Maybe just one chamber that week. And then you're looking at the 13th, 14th, and 15th. And after that, they're done. So not too terribly many in-person voting days. Now they could still hold committee hearings, but we don't see a lot going on.
Yeah, that doesn't leave a lot of time to get through priorities or whatever else may happen. And of course, the election outcome could affect those scheduled days too, as well, correct?
I think so. I mean, you think that we talked about this earlier. You don't think they're going to do much if things change, do you?
I don't see a lot of motivation for anyone to do anything if there's a change, whether the governor's change or one of the chambers flips. What's the motivation of anyone there to kind of work with those people that the dynamic's going to change in their favor one way or the other, right? You go to let's say you have a Republican run legislature and a Republican governor, or a Democratic governor and a Democratic Senate, let's say, there's motivation changes very quickly after that election. But if everything stays the same, then I think you could see a fairly active lame duck, especially with the amount of money that's still out there for a supplemental vote potentially. So we'll see.
We are hearing they're talking about a supplemental.
Correct. Yeah.
So maybe that's what they stick around for. Maybe, outgoing legislators who need projects done in their districts. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting dynamic. Well, let's talk a little bit about if there is a lame duck session. What are some of the issues we're going to be focusing on through the end of the year?
Well, for sure, revenue sharing trust fund is at the top of our priority list. That's the same thing we've been talking about for months and months and months. Actually years we've been working on it, but it's a carve out of the state sales tax that would go into a fund that then the legislature would appropriate out of revenue sharing from that fund. So instead of just a general fund appropriation for revenue sharing, it would be X amount of dollars is in that account based on whatever percentage of the sales tax we settle on. And then every year, that's what gets doled out to local units of government for revenue sharing. It's a little bit more secure. Huge priority for us. Would love to see that get done because nobody understands revenue sharing. It doesn't matter for how many years we talk about statutory revenue sharing and constitutional revenue sharing, and how counties are not part of constitutional revenue sharing or the reserve funds that we created. It's horrifically confusing. And so by creating this trust fund, we're hoping that it takes at least some of the confusion out of it, makes a little bit more sense. So that's for me. That's kind of number one on my list for priorities, but we have others.
Yeah, Madeline, you want to talk to us a little bit on some of the changes on OMA?
Yeah, so we are hopeful that the OMA rewrite legislation moves in the next couple weeks. That is a full line by line linguistic update of the Open Meetings Act. There's very few substantive policy changes within this bill. It's all about the language, removing the legalese, simplifying it so there are no inadvertent violations. We testified in committee on it. We've met with the sponsor. We've talked about clarifying a few things, just a bit more, a couple definitions such as breach of peace, the process for going in and out of closed sessions, still a little bit unclear. We'd like to see just a bit more tightening. But I anticipate a new draft of that legislation, hopefully this week, and then hopefully a hearing when they return. The other piece of OMA, that remote participation bill, I know everyone wants to see it go through. We would love to see it go through. Unfortunately, we're hearing that it's not going to. They just can't get that caucus support.
Well, hopefully with the new legislature coming in at the beginning of next year, I know we've been talking with some of the policy folks on getting that teed up for next year right away, so we can begin working on that as quickly as possible. Of course, something that want to see continued changes to going forward. So, things happen and we do our best, but sometimes things are out of our control too. So we'll keep working on that one, and of course, we'll need the help of our members to help push that through beginning of next year. Sam, there's quite a few health and human services and judiciary issues that we're going to be watching through the end of the year. You want to start and talk quickly about the juvenile justice beds? There was an article in our news weekly legislative update that went up Friday. You want to touch on that quick and then move into maybe trial court funding and some of the mental health stuff?
Absolutely. So as far as the juvenile justice bed shortage goes, MAC and almost 10 other stakeholders signed on to a letter together to Governor Whitmer and the Department of Health and Human Services, asking them to address this bed shortage crisis. In the letter, we talk about the lack of short-term local juvenile detention resources, as well as a lack of out-of-home placement options for highest risk youth. There's a handful of issues that have led to this crisis, from raise the age legislation, which added the 17-year-old population to the juvenile justice system, closing of state and private treatment beds, the pandemic, new rules and regulations. And so all of those combined, we have short-term facilities operated by courts and counties that are housing juveniles for months at a time, as opposed to days and weeks. So not only, are we facing a crisis as far as where are we housing the juveniles, but also they're not receiving the services that they should be. So there's high-risk justice-involved youth that don't have proper placement, and most of them have mental health challenges. So the issue is twofold here. We need to provide services as well as housing. So in the letter, we asked the governor, the department, as well as legislators to take action, work with stakeholders, and address this crisis. It also goes with the Juvenile Justice Task Force recommendations that were provided to the legislature. There's a potential bill package on that. We'd love to see it move in this lame duck session, but a majority of those bills the language isn't there yet, so it'll likely be something we're going to tackle at the start of the next legislative session. And then just to touch on the trial court funding briefly, House Bill 5956, which extends that legislative sunset for trial court funding authority to May of 2024, that was signed by the governor on October 7th. The previous sunset expired on October 1st. So for cases between the 1st and the 7th, Scale has advised that any questions regarding a court's ability to assess those court costs, the judge assigned to the case uses their discretion and resolves that themselves. And then the last thing I've got is the mental health bill package deal. So we have two different mental health packages, one in each chamber. The Senate version is a 2-bill package. The lead sponsor on that is Senator Currie. And the House version, the lead sponsor is Representative Whiteford. The packages look different, but the deal, I want to emphasize, this is something, in the rumor mill in the Lansing circles. We haven't seen any concrete changes. I don't have any confirmation on the language, but the potential for the deal would include moving all children's Medicaid services over to private insurance companies, and the remainder of Medicaid populations would be managed under a single state entity. So essentially, we'd be going from 10 prepaid inpatient health plans to 1. We sent out a P2A last Monday, encouraging our members to contact their legislators in opposition to, Senator Currie's current bill package. Those are Senate Bills 597 and 598. Any changes to those packages that look, what this potential deal could be, and also any attempts to privatize our local public mental health system, whether that's in this lame duck session or in future legislative sessions. So, and if anyone has questions about, the potential outcomes if this deal goes through, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to walk anyone through it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and we'll of course keep people updated through, any sort of emergency issues through weekly legislative updates or anything on a daily basis. So just stay close to your emails as we kind of move through this post-Thanksgiving holiday, as Deena kind of talked about the schedule and everything like that, some issues that we're going to really need some help on and focused on throughout the end of the year. Deena, finally, well, not finally, but almost finally, there's another Treasury webinar coming up we want to highlight.
Yeah, Treasury's been doing these since the beginning of COVID. So they're called updates and resources for local government webinar. And it's every few months, they pick a few topics, invite local government officials to attend the webinar. It's an hour long. They bring in speakers and they talk about different topics. So this month it's happening Thursday at 2:00. So Thursday, November 3rd at 2:00. And they're going to cover things on blight. They're going to have mission to talk about housing, and then they've got the DNR talking about grants for public perks. So there's still time to register for that webinar. You can get onto Treasury's website. When you register, you have the opportunity to ask some questions ahead of time. If you do have specific things that you're looking for, type in a question. And either they'll make sure that they include the answer to those questions in their presentation, or we will try to follow up and ask those questions while they're talking. So I encourage everybody. They've really been a huge success, and local units seem to love talking directly to the department on it. So that's
Great.
okay.
And I think we sent some information out on that as well, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep. Maybe we can include it in our legislative update.
All right, finally, I will turn it over to Madeline, who's going to be handling a new piece of the podcast. And I failed to mention at the beginning that today is Monday, October 31st. While the podcast won't be released till tomorrow, it is Halloween here in the office. So we're going to be introducing a new piece, a little trivia, and Madeline is going to handle it this week. So Madeline, I'll let you kind of explain it, and then I'll take it over at the end.
All right, yes. So this game is for the listeners. I think we only came up with this game because I have a whiteboard conveniently located right behind me. I'm just going to ask a trivia question. Feel free to email me directly at fata@micounties.org with your answers. The first one to email it incorrectly wins a hat, I believe. And please don't Google it. Put your thinking caps on. The question this week is, who was the first lady to decorate the White House for Halloween?
All right.
Again, when you've got your answers in, fata@micounties.org.
All right, so who is the first lady to decorate the White House for Halloween? Very good, very timely question there. Here's the hat we'll be sending out. It's probably a little backwards, but
I love that hat.
it turned out all right. So we'll send that out to the first one who emails fata@micounties.org. Get that out here in the next week. So get your thinking caps on and get typing. So, all right. Does anyone else have anything before we close things out?
No, happy Halloween. Looking forward to the election results. I'm sure we'll get back on and do another podcast after we get those results, but
Yep. And one more thing, just a question for the staff here, because they love when I just kind of go off.
oh,
the
I hate
cuff
it when he does
and
this.
don't prepare. But who will be playing Christmas music tomorrow at their house? Raise your hand. Samantha? That's
Oh,
it?
I'm stopping at my parents' house tomorrow and getting my Christmas tree and bringing it to my apartment, and it will be up this weekend.
Are you kidding?
I'm so serious. I
Yeah.
love
What
Christmas.
happened to Thanksgiving? None of
Well,
that
The
happens
longer
till
the
after
tree is up,
Thanksgiving.
the more I get to enjoy it.
Kind of been absorbed by Christmas. It's like one big holiday now. That
It's all
3
one. Thanksgiving feels Christmassy to me.
Sometimes
Make
we
all the
have
kids super thankful and remind them that if they're thankful, they'll get better Christmas presents. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, well, good luck. It probably won't work in my house, but
Are you playing Christmas music at your house?
I won't be. My wife will be starting it tonight while she's hanging out candy.
Wow.
Music. Yes.
Madeline,
Is-
you?
No, I put Halloween decorations up in like August, but Christmas stuff is post Thanksgiving for me. But the tree just went up downtown
That's
Lansing
true, yeah.
yesterday,
Yeah.
I think, so we're gearing up for Christmas here already.
Well,
Well,
great.
I'm hosting a baby shower before the holidays for my new grandbaby coming in January. So I'm gonna wait until after that before I get to Christmas. That's
Okay,
my plan.
makes sense, I guess. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks to Comcast for sponsoring the podcast. All right. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83, brought to you in part by Comcast, bringing the power of the internet into Michigan homes and businesses.